Welcome to Normalize the Conversation. I'm your host, Francesca Regeter, and today I'm joined by Rob Hosking, a passionate mental health advocate and TEDx speaker. Join us as we delve into a critical topic, the profound impact of the workplace environment on mental health. Whether you're an employee seeking balance or an employer eager to cultivate a mentally healthy workplace, this conversation promises valuable perspectives and tangible strategies. Together, we'll unravel the dynamics shaping mental health at work. Rob, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited for our conversation on mental well-being in the workplace. But before we begin, I want to check in with you. How are you really?
Yes, first of all, thanks for having me. And yeah, secondly, yeah, all good here. And it's been a difficult few months. I broke my rib recently, so I hadn't really been able to go to the gym and work out as much as I would have liked to. So it's been just building that up and having some patience with the recovery process, which has been a little bit longer than I would have liked. But you know what it's like. It's you have to be patient with these things and not rush back to them. So yeah, but now on the mend and I can get back to the gym and get back to normality.
Oh, I'm so sorry you've been injured, but I'm happy to see that you have that mindset of having patience with it and giving yourself grace because it is really frustrating when you get injured and you can't do something that you enjoy doing. So, but I hope that it heals quick and as
Yeah,
seamlessly as possible and that you're back doing what you love
yeah,
doing.
yeah, definitely. And you know what? It took me a wee while to understand this art of patience because when I was younger, I definitely didn't understand it, and I just wanted to get back out, play football, and things like that. But I think as I got older, I realized I need to listen to my body more because you just end up hurting yourself more, and then you're out for longer. So it's definitely been a long time to learn that art of patience.
I always say patience is a virtue I do not have.
Yeah, you know what? It can come in so many different ways. And when I was a police officer, I had to learn patience with people in, like aggressive situations and things like that. So I learned that through the police because I had to. But in certain aspects of my life, some different aspects, I don't really have the patience for it. I just like, if I'm just like walking in the town or something like that, I'm wanting to get past people because I don't like slow walkers, so I don't have the patience for it. So there's so many different aspects of patience. Sometimes I have it, and other times I really don't.
The slow walkers thing is totally me. I go for a walk usually every morning that I'm home, and I will like zoom right around people who are
Yeah,
taking their sweet time on the sidewalk. Drives me, I get so
yeah,
annoyed. But each their own. If people want to walk slow, just stay out of
yeah,
my way.
yeah.
Or
That's it.
maybe I'll get some patience one day. Who knows?
Yeah.
But jumping into our topic of mental well-being in the workplace, first, I want to hear more about your experience that kind of led you to focusing in on this awareness.
Yeah, so my experience kind of, I've obviously had different jobs throughout my life, but my experience with especially workplace well-being has to come from my time within the police. I was a police officer for 5 years, back from 2015 to 2020, and throughout those 5 years, like there were so many things that I saw, so many negative and traumatic events that I saw and witnessed through members of the public and people I dealt with, but also I saw a very negative work culture, a macho culture that existed. And I saw the impacts that that culture had on people. And we were dealing with awful things. We were dealing with traumatic events, but that was only a part of the impact that it had on you. That was only half the negative that actually impacted you. The other half was the workplace culture that existed, the toxicity of the place. And I was always interested in why it existed because I saw many people unhappy in their job, me included, and a job that impacted people's mental health and happiness. And I thought, that is so wrong. A job can't make you happy. And I firmly believe that a job solely can't make you happy, but a job solely can make you unhappy. And to have that power, a job to have that power, I think is so wrong in society. But unfortunately, it happens. We spend so much time, so much of our life at work. So Of course, that's going to have an impact on our lives and our mental health. But what we need to do is we can't change that. We can't not go to work, but we need to change this idea of, well, how are people treated in the workplace and change these cultures to have cultures of people where they flourish and thrive rather than just get by and this negative culture that exists. So I think it was from my time in the police, I saw so many wrong things that were happening. And when you see the wrong things, it makes you awake to how you can do things better. And from my side, I definitely saw what could be done better instead of the things they were doing.
It's always blown my mind this idea that you shouldn't be happy at work or you don't need to be
Yeah.
happy in your workplace. There's that quote that if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And for a lot of people, that just seems like a dream world that you would enjoy what you do and that you wouldn't feel like you're dreading work, going to work. But the reality of it is we should feel I'm not saying that you should always like be super excited to get up at 6 a.m. and go to work. Like that's not the reality.
Yeah.
However, if your job is making you feel so miserable, you don't deserve that. And maybe it is just the position of the job itself. Maybe it's multiple environmental factors. Maybe it's the culture of the company. Whatever it is, you deserve to feel a little bit of happiness or excitement or peace or calm when you go to the workplace and not like you're under this constant microscope of stress and about to break down at all times.
Exactly. And this raises the important question of stress because, of course, I will never say to people, let's eradicate stress from our work lives because it's impossible. We are always going to have stress. But what we need to eradicate is the excessive stress, the chronic stress that exists in society. And for me in the police, I was under not only stress, but excessive and chronic stress every day. That excessive stress each day was getting to me because of what I was dealing with and how the organization dealt with things. Then another day and another shift comes by and that stress still existed. So the stress became chronic. And that is not a workplace environment. That's not an environment in general where anybody can thrive under. No one can thrive under excessive and chronic stress. Too much stress is bad. And it's not only bad for you in your environment, but it's then bad for you in terms of your physical health too. Mentally, it's clear stress and this bad stress is bad for you. But also physically, this excessive, this chronic stress impacts your body because it will then, it increases these hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline. Short term, they're brilliant because it can give you motivation to be productive, get the job done. If you're working to a tight deadline, that stress actually fuels you to be like, right, let's get the job done. But when that stress is, as I said, the bad stress, the chronic stress, the excess stress, it does the opposite because it decreases your productivity, it increases your chance of illness, and you're then in a place where you're not thriving because it's impacting you physically, never mind mentally. So we need to always get that right balance. And I always say this in the talks that I do in workplaces where we're not trying to eradicate stress, we're trying to eradicate bad stress. And bad stress comes from mismanagement. It comes from poor culture because we're all going to have excessive stress every now and again. Of course we are. But as I said, when that becomes every day you're going to work and you've got that excess stress, that's when it becomes chronic and that's when it then impacts you. And that's when we need to change it.
I really appreciate that you made that distinction between stress and bad stress because it's not realistic to be like, oh, I'm never going to feel stressed out again. There
Okay.
are stressors. Life comes with so many stressors that are just built into it. There's so many things you can't control. There's always going to be deadlines and standards that you need to meet in the workplace and just in different areas of your life in general. And to say that stress shouldn't exist and all stress is bad is unfair. But to be able to target that, there's that extreme level of stress and pressure that is causing you to feel maybe sick or tired or overwhelmed or have these constant breakdowns. I mean, it leads to burnout in both physical and mental ways, like you've said. And it's not fair to think that that's normal. And yet it's been so normalized in our kind of society and in the workplace culture that you should be at that brink of burnout every day and just keep pushing and functioning through it. When in reality, you should not. Like, you really should not
Yeah,
be at that point of burnout every day and think that this is just part of life.
exactly. And that's that point of we need to change our relationship with stress as people and as organizations. And there's this stat that I came across recently, and it said that 80%, so I think this is in the UK, but 80% of visits to the primary care doctors are caused by or exasperated by unmanaged stress. 80%.
Mm.
See, stress, people aren't going necessarily just for stress, but they're going for symptoms that are caused by stress, the insomnia, the aches and pains, the fatigue, the burnout, as you've mentioned. These things are caused by this unmanaged bad stress that we're under. So we need to change our relationship with stress, both as an organization and as individuals, because we shouldn't be thinking, oh, this is normal. So we're going to get stressed out today. It's going to be excess. And then tomorrow is going to be the same. And the next day is going to be the same. That needs to change. We should not ever feel like we need to be put under that stress all the time because it's wrong. And organizations need to understand our staff are humans, not robots. We can't work them into the ground. We can't expect them to just go from high stress thing to high stress thing to high stress thing. Yes, high stress thing every now and again is fine, but that repeated action, it's not. And for me in the police, this is where yet again this idea was raised in me where I was like, I need to do something. I need to talk about this more because I was going from a traumatic event to another traumatic event to another traumatic event to another, and you even think of the stressors that that's impacting on me, how much high stress I was under, going from somebody who's just been stabbed to then somebody who's just hung themselves to then somebody who's just had a heart attack. That could be on one shift and then go again the next day. I'm like, right, what's today? And it's bang, bang, bang. That's unfortunately it's part of the job. But I always say what we can do in between those things, those traumatic events, how we get treated, how the culture is, that is not expected. That should not be expected. That needs to change so that we've got better resilience to handle this stress whenever we are under it.
That must be a really difficult job to have and to constantly experience these traumatic moments and like the worst ends of people's lives. And to do that day in and day out and then not have that support you need from the organization as a whole is very difficult. But it's the reality in so many companies ingrained in the culture is this idea of profit and results over people.
Yep.
And that really needs to shift. But a lot of organizations, I want to believe that it's like this ignorance of not knowing what is acceptable and what's not acceptable and how to be supportive. I don't want to believe that people are like choosing to not care.
Yeah.
However, that's probably very much reality in so
Yeah.
many places.
Yeah.
But I really want to hold on to this idea of
Yeah.
this really innocent idea that people don't know better. So for those people who don't know better, what are some kind of negative things within a company's culture to look out for to say, hey, you know what, that is a red flag that I should be looking for from both an employee and a management standpoint?
Yeah. So it's twofold. We need to look into training, how we train our managers. But before we even need to look into how we train our managers, we also need to look into who we're promoting. Because unfortunately, too many organizations promote the wrong people. There's some people out there that you've probably come across and you think, no matter what, you're not a manager. No offense to you, but you will never be a good manager. And we need to be willing to say, well, that's okay then. Yes, they might have some criteria, whatever, but some people are not destined to be good managers. It's a fact. And even with all the training in the world, some of them are just not meant to be good managers. We need to promote good people for the job. We need to promote the right people for the job. And then it comes down to training. How are we training them? Are we training them in terms of, right, this is what we need to do to get the to get our budget met. This is what we need to go to do to get staff to meet all these targets. Is it so orientated in statistics and results? How we're training managers? How do we get the best out of these people?
Yeah.
Or is it a well-being centered approach where that question of how do we get the best out of these people, well-being comes first. That's how we get the best out of anybody in life. Focus on their well-being. So we need to look at both of these things. Who's getting promoted and then what are they getting trained with? And as an organization, I feel like there's so many things and so many times that I've seen where organizations can tick the boxes. They can say, oh, well, we've done this. Tick, tick, tick. The things like Pizza Fridays, they think, happy days, that's enough. We do pizzas on Fridays for our staff. What more do you want? They can bring a ping pong table on into the office and be like, well, there you go, you've got a ping pong table to relax in. And I want to make the point where those things are brilliant. Yes, they're absolutely brilliant, but it's not enough. If you think that's good workplace culture, you're completely wrong with what actual workplace culture is. Because the main thing we need to focus on with workplace culture is how staff treat other staff, how we treat our people, because your people make your business. That is the fundamental fact in all this. People make business. So how do we treat these people? And then that brings us to language. As you'll understand yourself, language in terms of mental health and well-being is so paramount. Getting the right language is so important because if you say something wrong, all of a sudden that could create a stigma. That could make someone not want to open up. Creating the right language is paramount. And I've seen organizations, say we care about work-life balance. And in their document online where they're trying to get people to be like, oh, they're a good organization. On their website, they'll say, we care about work-life balance and all this. But the facts, and I've seen it firsthand, are that whenever you leave on the exact time when you're meant to leave, 5 o'clock, let's say you're leaving at 5 o'clock, a line manager will look up at you, or even staff will look up at you and they'll be like, you leaving already? It's only 5 o'clock. And you're like, yeah, that's when I finish. But unfortunately, in society, in these organizations, or so many organizations, it exists that there's a badge of honor to work late. It's a badge of honor to give more of yourself to a business. But the fact of the reality is, once you do your full hours, unless there's something actually, a priority that you need to get done, why should you ever be judged for leaving early? But yet the organization says they care about work-life balance, but then individuals show that they don't. And these individuals are the ones who are the line managers or even just staff in general. An organization can say they care about confidentiality and trust. Trust is so important with staff and colleagues. But yet a line manager, yet again, this is first-hand experience. A line manager can start a meeting by saying, so have I missed any gossip when I was off? And you think, gossip? A line manager is even using that word of gossip. Have I missed any gossip? I'll never, ever accept that gossip is good. Gossip will only bring negativity. And if you're accepting that from a manager's point of view, the organization can say all they want about what they care about, but the actions of the individuals that they promote and the actions of individuals of staff that they accept, that is what makes good workplace culture or bad workplace culture. That is the things we need to focus on rather than their website looking brilliant because they've ChatGPT'd what good workplace culture looks like.
What really comes up for me with all of this is this fear that people have of talking to their managers, of talking to their bosses and asking for support. When you're talking about the stigma in the language, when you're talking about gossiping, it's like, I'm afraid they're going to talk about me, that they're going to give me this bad name, that I'm going to look bad to them and to my coworkers for needing some kind of accommodation. And it might be something as simple as, I have a doctor appointment and I really need to take an extended lunch break today so I can make it to my appointment. Or I have kids that I need to pick up from school and I need that flexibility because you're not paying me enough to afford a
Yeah.
babysitter to pick them up, right? Um,
Yeah.
so, but there is this fear of how do I talk to them? What are they going to say? How are they going to respond? And that really does come down to that language and the way we talk about people behind their backs in the workplace. Are we talking about people in a positive way where we're saying, do you see the work they did today? That was amazing. Or are we saying, oh my goodness, she left early and left all of us to work. What's wrong with her? Why does she feel like she's so much better than us? She's so entitled, XYZ, whatever it is. The way
Yeah.
we talk, like you said, really does matter. And the way people are afraid to ask for an accommodation that they need, I think just really emphasizes that negative environment that's just built on fear.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate thing that exists, that people know what's probably being said behind their back because they've seen it firsthand themselves, where somebody's spoken about somebody else behind their back. And I've had the experience of in the police where people were all for work-related stress, and my colleague I was working with, we were talking about it, and we were saying, "Oh, I think they were all for work-related stress," and he replied saying, "Oh, that's just an excuse, isn't it?" And it's not an excuse. It's work-related stress. But people think that mental health, they think that stress, they think these are excuses to take time off because they know that they won't get questioned if they just say, "Oh, work-related stress." But the facts of the reality are that yes, maybe they are affected by work-related stress. Yes, do have poor mental health. Let's not jump. The first thing we jump to is it must be an excuse. They must be wrong. Instead, let's actually ask, has anybody checked in on them to see if they're okay?
Yeah.
And this is another thing with organizations. I feel like they need to be, one of my biggest tips would be to each organization is you need to be proactive rather than reactive when it comes to work-related stress, mental health, well-being in general of your staff. Don't wait for your staff member to be off sick to tell them, by the way, here's employee well-being benefits if you want to look at it, or they're off for a mental health related condition. Then to say, okay, I'm here if you need me. That should be proactive. That should be every day since you join that organization that you can speak up. You can talk to them about anything. You can challenge things when you're not happy with things, and it won't be held against you. And these well-being benefits are told, or are spoken to you, and you know about them from day one, not when you get sick or whenever a problem arises. And that is the problem that exists in so many organizations. They're too reactive rather than let's be proactive right from the get-go so that people can understand, you know what, this is a safe environment. They will prioritize me as a person. And when they do that, 9 times out of 10, I firmly believe, or I think 99.9% of the time, that employer will give so much more of themselves to your organization because happiness sparks creativity. Happiness sparks productivity. And there's a statistic that says happy staff are 13% more productive. So any organization that wants to say anything about well-being and, oh no, we don't want to focus on that. If you care about a successful business, create happier staff. End off. Because happier staff are 13% more productive.
It really comes down to this environment where people genuinely understand that their thoughts matter, their feelings matter, and their voice matters. And it matters not just to them as their own individual human being, but to their coworkers, to their managers, to everyone in that workplace environment. But I love what you said about being reactive because it's so true. And anything that comes with mental health, we do tend to be so reactive. And if we're waiting till our employees are burnt out, so their mental health is in a really bad space, so people are having suicidal thoughts where they feel not good enough, where they're just not, they're feeling fatigued, they're feeling just depressed, anxious, overwhelmed, frustrated all the time. If we're waiting to that point, we're waiting for them to completely burn out crash and for our productivity to go down to say, hey, what's going on? you matter enough to get my productivity up, when really it should be focused on how can we support you so that productivity can go up and so that you
Mhm.
feel valued here and that you feel valued just as a human being. It really comes down to being a human first.
Definitely. And that word there, valued, I think is so important in workplace well-being because staff want to feel valued in their workplace. They want to feel like they belong. As humans, we want to feel like we belong in a community in our personal life, in our mind, in our professional life. By making our staff feel valued, by making them feel like they belong, because they actually do, I said the productivity you get from that, the happier staff that you get from that is life changing for an organization. Don't change for change's sake. Allow your staff to be involved in what the organization will look like because they're the ones who are part of it. They're the ones who are going to be impacted the most by the decisions you make. So let them have a voice. And by allowing people like that, your staff to have a voice, that's how you can help make them feel valued and feel like they belong because their voice matters. And too many organizations don't realize that their staff's voice matters the most in an organization because it's the one, these staff, the people who are doing all the work. Now, I'm not saying CEOs and all don't, but I'm just saying the staff, with, because they're doing the work, they need to feel these positive um, traits from management that, you're doing a great job. And I just want to remind you how great you are. I just want to check in today to make sure you're okay. Is there anything we can do as an organization to help you today? And that's when, as you said earlier, about, well, actually, you know what? Do you mind if I leave a little bit earlier? I need to collect my child or I need to go to the dentist, whatever it may be. There's accommodation because you know that's give and take. Because you know your employer, your employee is going to give back to you because you're going to give them some things too. That's what makes a good organization tick. It's that trust, and trust works both ways. So let's make sure we're not talking about people behind their backs. And if we're seeing that, let's challenge that culture. Otherwise, we're part of the culture ourselves. And let us create an environment where we all belong and there's this trust that exists between staff in general, but between management and staff too in the upper levels, because that's the main thing. Trust matters in life, never mind as in a business.
It's amazing what a supportive statement, a validation, affirmation can really do. And when people
Mhm.
feel valued and they feel like their company cares about them, they're more likely to care about the work they're doing and the work they're producing and the output of it. And none of this is to say that if you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed and burnt out, that you should just say, I'm not going to do any of my work anymore and walk away and then get upset if they come have a conversation with you about it. It's to say that you deserve to talk to your management, talk to your team, ask for support. You deserve to say, you know what, this is a lot for me, and I don't think I can do this all on my own. I could use some support. Is there anyone who could help me? Right? It's not to say that the company's bottom line doesn't matter. It's to say that it doesn't matter more than you. You both
Yeah.
matter, and figuring out ways to support both sides is super important. And you don't have to feel so alone in it. But I really wanted to clarify that point because it's so important that a company's bottom line does matter so we can get paid.
Yep.
Absolutely. We need
Definitely.
money to have a salary. However, it shouldn't come at the expense of your mental health. It shouldn't come at the expense of
Yep.
your physical health. And it's okay to ask for support when you need it. You don't have to struggle through it in silence because that's the expectation.
Yeah, definitely. And supportive management, supportive colleagues, that's what it comes down to. Because as you said, these affirmations that you can get, these positive affirmations of just a job well done, a pat on the back, they're so important. And organizations may not realize just how important they are because I've had in my professional career, too many people come to me when I've done something wrong or could have done it better. But they didn't come to me when I've done something brilliant. They never came to me then. They only came to me with the negatives. And it takes a little bit of, it takes a chunk out of you each time because you think, oh, but I did that last week. It was just brilliant. And they didn't even care because they expect it. But as soon as you make a mistake, there's no support. There's just like, you've done this wrong. This is why, and you need to improve on it. You think, and there's give and take. Yes, you need constructive criticism, of course, but you also need this positive affirmation of, well, what are you doing right? Because you are doing something right. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a job. So let's not forget, as an organization, as line managers, tell people, by the way, I love what you did last week. That was top quality work, and mean it, because I've seen it in the police force, especially. All of a sudden, you could see that management got a training session about sending positive feedback, because all of a sudden the positive feedback came, it flooded in, but it was all the same language. It was all the same things that they were all sending out. And you're like, you've obviously got a book of things to say, and you've just taken it from the book. There was no personalization to it. You didn't think, oh, wow, thank you so much. Instead, let's even forget about the email. Just go to the person, sit with them, just say to them, by the way, brilliant. Or it's little things like this. See a line manager coming to you and saying, do you want me to make you a cup of tea or anything, or a coffee? I'm just about to go to the kitchen. Do you want me to make you something? Because especially in the police, there was this expectation that the newer staff would make the coffees for the line managers and all the older staff. And if there was coffees needed, they would look at the younger member of staff and they would say, right, come on, you need to make us tea and coffee. And I think once my sergeant came to me and he says, Rob, he knew we were busy. We were doing tons of paperwork. We were doing overtime at that point because we needed to get this thing done. And he came to me and he said, Rob, you want a coffee? I'll go make it for you. And that little thing just made a difference. I was like, oh, thank you. Because he didn't have to say, by the way, great work. But that little thing of, I'm going to make you a coffee. He was about to go home himself, but he's like, I'm going to make you a coffee before I go. That matters. That personalization matters more than an email of brilliant work today, but that anybody can construct. So I think managers need to understand that a little bit more too, of, these little gestures actually go a long way. And it's even things like, if sending a Christmas card, or, bringing in some cakes for the staff, things like that. It's little things, but it actually just shows that the organization cares about you, that they're not just going to take you for granted all the time.
I think those are such wonderful examples of how an organization can implement some kind and supportive, compassionate conversations into the workplace to really show that their employees are valued no matter where they rank. There's something
Yeah.
as small as, I really appreciate how you come in with a smile every day. You bring so much joy into the workplace, or something about their work and how great it was, or how much you appreciate them, or just something of kindness that you can say, or
Yeah.
something small like bringing a cup of coffee, or maybe a pastry, or just something, asking them to go to lunch with you. Just small things that you can do to make someone feel valued and cared for. It's essential because, again, going back to your mental health, when you feel like you're not valued, that people don't care about you, that you don't matter, it's not going to be good for your mental health. You're going to start questioning your self-worth, and you should never feel that way. You should never question if you're valued. So, small things that you can do, whether it's a kind phrase or a small gesture, make such a difference.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing. It's the little things. I think too many organizations like to think they need to go big when they think of workplace well-being. They need to hire a yoga teacher in to give 4 sessions of yoga each week for a month. They think they need to do these kind of big gestures. But in fact, it's the daily gestures that matter the most. It's the little things that matter the most. Now, getting yoga is brilliant, yes. But I'm just saying, the point is that that won't make good workplace culture. Good workplace culture comes from the little things. It comes from the understanding of what your staff are doing for the organization. It comes from understanding that your staff are human, and these little gestures matter. And I will always stick to that whenever I look back, I think it was that little gesture of just someone making me a coffee, a sergeant making me a coffee. People wouldn't remember that a lot of times. But for me, I'm like, that's what good workplace culture was. That coffee getting made for me, that was a perfect example of good workplace culture.
A cup of coffee goes a long way.
Yeah, especially when I was needing it.
Especially when you're tired, exhausted, up
Yeah,
for way too many hours working and staring at a computer screen, a cup of coffee really keep you going.
yeah,
Rob, you've
definitely.
been absolutely amazing. As we are wrapping up, what's one last piece of advice that you could offer an organization who maybe listening to this conversation, they're realizing, you know what? I haven't really been people centered. We haven't really been focused on our employees' well being and mental well being in the workplace. What is maybe a starting point of what they can do to start transforming into a culture that cares?
I think they always need to realize the little things matter. It's language goes so far in workplace culture. How you speak to your staff daily, how you speak to your staff when things are going wrong and when you're stressed. I think how you speak to staff in every day that they show up to work really matters. And I think people out there should maybe look at how they talk to their staff, review their management style and ask themselves the hard question of, am I doing it right? Am I really promoting this language where people feel like they can open up to me? Am I promoting a language that people think, you know what? I can say that I'm suffering with mental health or I've got whatever it may be. They can do it because they feel they feel seen, they feel heard, and they feel valued in that organization. And there's a quote, sorry, there's a statistic that says 73% of employees say that they don't want to report a mental health condition to the workplace because they feel like it would jeopardize their job status. 73%. Look at these statistics if you're a manager or any organization you've got, whether you're as it just a staff member or a line management of some sort. Look at these statistics and understand yourself. Am I doing enough to make sure that any person in this organization that I work with are not part of this statistic? Because it's a really good way to ask yourself these hard questions. If you think to yourself, you know what, I promote a culture where mental health is not seen as a weakness, where people can open up, then that statistic isn't relevant to you. But look at them, look at these statistics that exist, look at how you talk to people daily. And the last little thing, look at your little gestures. What are you doing? What have you done for your staff that you may think is an everyday thing, but potentially might make the world of difference to them in a day that might just be a really, really bad day for them? What could you do differently? Just a little thing. What could you do differently? And ask yourself these questions.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.